record this session so we can use it later, and folks want to know more about the Impact Conference, they'll be able to do that. Great. So wanted to start off by asking folks if you want to drop in the chat what you know about the Impact Conference. So I know for maybe folks that have recently transitioned in this field, recently started in this field, maybe Impact Conference is new to you, or maybe you've attended us previously, recently, before the pandemic, or a long time ago when we were maybe Idealist or Cool. So I wanted to welcome folks to drop anything you know about the Impact Conference into the chat. Maybe you're here to learn a lot, which will be great too. I'll get to share a lot of new information if you aren't as familiar. So maybe Haley's in that camp. While folks are maybe typing into the chat, I wanted to introduce myself. My name is Heidi Vielhaber. I use she, her pronouns. I work with Girl Scouts of Colorado, and I am on the board for the Impact of Directors. And Jasmine, if you want to introduce yourself too, since you're on the call.
Yes, hi everyone. My name is Jasmine Smalls. I have 11-year history in higher education, but recently left at the top of this year. My experience with Impact, I started as an attendee and then worked my way to planning committee for several years, and then hosted the last in-person conference in 2020 at Arizona State University, and now a board member.
Great. Thanks, Jasmine. It looks like a lot of folks are new to Impact, so we'll have a lot of great things to share with you today. One of the things we still wanted to start with is just what is Impact? So we have a rich history spanning almost 40 years of being the largest annual volunteer-led, which I think is important because all of us are volunteers on our board and on our planning committee. We are the largest volunteer-led student-focused conference. So we're focused on engaging students in service, action, and advocacy. Those are our three main pillars. And we'll talk a little bit more about social justice and how that interplays with those as well. You maybe have heard about us historically as the Idealist Conference or the Cool Conference. So we've gone through a few iterations, but now our own standalone 501c3 as the Impact Conference. And we want to connect, educate, and mobilize college students, educators, and nonprofit professionals so they can strengthen their communities. So I want to spend some time talking about our mission, vision, and values. This is something that's really integral to our work. And when we have our pillars of service, action, and advocacy for many years, we had been seeing from our attendees and from our planning committee and our board having conversations about, do we have another pillar of social justice, since that's something that folks have been talking a lot about and bringing forth. It's present in all of our pillars, and it also led us to want to update our mission, vision, and values to really reflect our students and the work that we're doing. And that we were starting to do this work in 2019, 2020, and with the summer of 2020, and a lot of the conversations that brought up and around George Floyd's murder, we really wanted to look at this intentionally and update our language to reflect who we are and how we want to engage in this work. And so some of the pieces you'll see here that are really important to us, starting with our value of liberation too. So really identifying anti-oppressive practices and working to attack those, and knowing that that's a journey for us and we may not always get it right, but we'll continue to do that work. Our focus is on serving undergraduate students. We are a conference of about 600, and about 500 of those attendees are undergraduate students. So we also want to make that space for others as well, but it is focused on undergraduate students. Local intentionality is a huge important piece of our work. We move our conference every year to a different community, usually a college or university, and we try to be intentional to move across the country to provide access, and then also to learn more about how other communities are addressing similar social issues, and to really infuse that local context into our conference. We are very focused on collaboration. That's a huge value of ours. So being highly collaborative with our host institution, with our sponsors, with our attendees. Collaboration is a big value. as well as aspiration, which for us is helping to support students in their professional growth and thinking about careers beyond school. But then that also ties in for administrators, exhibitors, year of service members, graduate students that are also attending. How are we making this conference meaningful and worthwhile to you as well? So those are all pieces that tie into our work to create that reflective learning space that centers student voices, but also challenges our understanding of service action and advocacy in the pursuit of social justice. So I want to talk a little bit about our key conference areas and also describe a little bit of how we are structured, since I mentioned this briefly. So we have a board of directors that oversees our work, and then we have a volunteer-run planning committee. We have 2 co-coordinators that are stipended that work with us, but are really volunteer-run. If you follow us on social media, you probably have met Amy and Kate already through social media. And then we have committee chairs. These 5 areas represent our 5 committees, and then we have members on those committees too that lead this work. So I want to share a little bit about the key conference areas through our committees. So you probably have been seeing a lot, heard about this through outreach. So that's the work that we're doing on social media, in emails to reach out to folks and get them engaged, share about who we are, what we're trying to accomplish, getting folks to register, attend workshops, submit workshops. So doing a lot of that promotion for all of our other committees and all the work that we're doing. We have our pre-conference and social committees, so they're focused on building some opportunities for folks that get to campus early before our opening keynote. A lot of times they're local service opportunities or opportunities to engage with our exhibitors, as well as social activities, often in the evening. I know every year we show a really powerful documentary that is always one of my favorite aspects of the conference. But most recently, when we were at ASU, we also infused some physical wellness into it, had a hike, did some yoga. So doing a lot of activities outside of our core content, which is our workshops. So this year we'll be having 7 workshop blocks where we usually feature between 10 to 16, depending on submissions and the campus availability of classroom spaces. We have a lot of workshops, and I want to talk to you a little bit about that next, about how you can engage in workshops and support students in engaging through workshops too. We really want our workshops to be focused on youth presenting, peers presenting to peers. So a lot of our college students presenting on their work and sharing that out too, but we also know that administrators have things to share with each other, or maybe can share about work that students are doing on their campus as well. We also usually have 3 keynotes that we try to integrate local voices, but also national voices talking about local issues and national issues as well. And have often have panels as well. Sometimes it's a standalone all conference panel. Sometimes there's panels interspersed throughout, or a panel block as well, to really highlight local voices and the work that is being done locally on issues that are important to that community. And then finally, we have our sponsorship committees that are working with a lot of different entities on our exhibitor fair. So on Friday and Saturday of our conference, which we'll talk about in a minute, our structure. It's an opportunity for graduate schools, for corporate entities, for year of service programs, for all kinds of different entities to get that face-to-face time with students and talk about the work that they're doing and share that out, and then sponsor our conference. So we're really excited for some really cool sponsorship opportunities that we have this year, including this year, we're also offering opportunities to promote job openings as well, which I think is really neat. So we can share a little bit more about that too. I want to share more about workshops, since this is something that we're in active recruitment for. Our deadline for workshops is coming up on November 4th. So our workshop blocks are 75 minutes long. So usually a good amount of time to present, and then some time for questions as well. We're offering 7 blocks this year. And we're really looking for support from administrators to encourage students to submit a proposal. We do have a lot of content on our website and then also on social media about what to think about when creating a proposal, how to make a compelling proposal, how to think about what you want to present on. But often the difference can be that mentoring adult in their life that encourages them to submit. So we're looking for your support in encouraging students to submit on some of the great work that they're doing, some of the innovative things that they're working on with community partners. We would love to hear that and showcase that in workshops this year. So you can also check us out on social media. There's a lot of content about what we've done previously, as well as on our website, some of the content that you'll see and the different types of tags that we have on a lot of different topics that represent a lot of current trends and things that students are working on in service learning, community-based work, and the work that we do. So I want to share a little bit more about our typical conference schedule. Our conference will be taking place this year at UMass Amherst, and we'll talk a little bit about the logistics of that in a second in Massachusetts. And it will be Thursday, February 23rd through Sunday, February 26th. And this is our typical conference schedule, so you can kind of get a sense of it year over year, what it looks like. And also this is what it'll look like this year as well. Registration check-in usually opens at 12 on Thursday, but you can check in on anytime on Thursday, anytime on Friday, anytime on Saturday. So feel free to check in when you're able to arrive. I know that for some folks, they might arrive early at 12. I know I'm in mountain time, so it takes me a little while to get to the East Coast. And then also with time zone changes can be a little tricky. So I might be showing up a little bit later. But for our folks that are there early, we have a lot of pre-conference activities. And once you're registered for the conference, we'll start to share more about what those are and how to sign up for those. Sometimes they're local service opportunities with the community. Sometimes it's we've done historical tours. We've done some different sponsor-led opportunities as well for service work or critical conversations. So lots of different opportunities. And then we usually start with an opening keynote around 5 in the evening to launch us into the conference. Friday and Saturday look very similar. We start with a morning keynote, so bringing us together in the morning, and then have workshop blocks throughout the day, and then also have an exhibitor fair during lunchtime, so folks can eat and then also connect with our exhibitors and sponsors during that time. And then social activities are in the evening, usually on Friday. On Saturday, we usually hold that time so you can explore the local community or go out to dinner together. And then Sunday, I know sometimes that can be a really convenient day to travel, especially if you've got a long travel day planned. But we love to have folks stay on Sunday. We have another workshop block and then a closing reflection time. So if you do have to head out early, maybe incorporate that reflection, since we know how important that is to make meaning of our experience. Kind of our timeline leading up to the conference. So right now we are seeking those workshop submissions. And we also have launched registration and also our sponsorship opportunities. So you can register to attend, you can submit a workshop proposal, you can sign up to be a sponsor at this time. In November, we'll start to close our workshop submissions. So again, our deadline is November 4th. We'd love to see as many submissions in at that time. Sometimes we do extend it a little bit just to give folks a little bit more time, but we'd love for folks to meet that deadline. And then we'll do some notification selection kind of in late November, early December. Our registration is open with our early bird registration pricing through January, and I'll share a little bit more about that on the next slide. And then the fee goes up a little bit, but you can register up to the day of the conference. You can walk in and register if that's what you need to do. And then in February, we'll have our conference on the 23rd through the 26th. So I think this is like the meat. This is what I really want to know about when I'm thinking about a conference. And I know that folks might have other questions too, so I want to make time for that. One of the questions that we often get is how much is the fee? So this year our conference is $220. That's the early bird registration. And we do have a group rate for more than 10 people. After early bird registration, the price is $250. So what does that fee cover? So that fee covers access to all of our programming. It also includes breakfast and lunch on Friday and Saturday, as well as breakfast on Sunday. We are partnering with UMass Amherst at their location. They have a food court that we'll be able to use kind of like a meal card in, as well as the local dining halls. So should be able to accommodate a lot of different dietary needs, which I know that may come up as well. It does not cover transportation. So that would include getting to Massachusetts are getting to the campus. I also am clarifying, but I don't think it includes parking either. So I have to think about transportation costs and then also lodging costs as well, and some meal costs, especially in the evenings too. We do have a hotel block. There is a hotel on campus. It's really centrally located, so it's super convenient. And so we do have a hotel block there where folks can stay, but we also know that a lot of administrators maybe get an Airbnb with their students that might be more financially viable for your institution or great for your community building that you're trying to accomplish together too. So there's lots of different options for housing. We are looking to see if we can get a second hotel block, and we're working on that right now. I think I mentioned this earlier, but there is not transportation to and from the airport. There are, I think there's the Bradley or Bradford Airport, as well as the Boston Logan Airport. So I think both are a little bit of a distance away. So that's something that you might have to take into consideration. But also we know that in the Northeast, a lot of our friends and colleagues will be driving in as well, which will be maybe convenient too. If you do have any dietary needs that you want to name so that we can make sure that that can be accommodated, or if you have any concerns about that, please let us know on the registration form. Additionally, if there are any accommodations that we can make to ensure the accessibility of the conference, please let us know that too on the registration form. The sooner we have that information, the better prepared we can be to work on that with you. So please just let us know how we can do that. I did mention this a little bit, but can you arrive on Friday morning? Yes, you can arrive on Friday afternoon. You can arrive on Saturday morning or Saturday afternoon. So we run registration all the time throughout our conference, maybe not on Sunday morning because we're really wrapping up at that time. But whatever works best for you and your students to attend. Thinking about COVID-19, what are our plans to address that at the conference? So one of the things that we're working with UMass Amherst is to understand what are their protocols and plans right now, what are their policies on campus, and mirroring that. We recently discussed probably having a masking recommendation that is in alignment with our values too, especially as we think of protecting immunocompromised folks that might be joining us as well. So that will be available in Guidebook. We also are trying to understand what are the university resources and how might we need to supplement that as a conference in terms of like testing or similar that would be available. And we are working on finalizing our policy on reimbursement. We want folks to know that if you feel sick the day of and you're supposed to fly, do not come to the conference, stay home, we will reimburse your fee. And so making sure that that's very clear and easy to understand. And then also making sure that folks who maybe test positive while they're at the conference or aren't feeling well while they're at their conference, that we have support for them as well. So trying to align really with what UMass Amherst has to offer and supplementing it if need be as well. So we're working on finalizing some of that. Another question that's been coming up a little bit is how our campus is selected to host. And so on our website, you can go and see the different opportunities to host. We do a 2 to 3 part application process. So we'll receive an application from you, and then we'll do a couple different interview rounds to kind of clarify, making sure that there's a big enough space for hosting our keynotes, availability of spaces to hold all of our workshops, having that exhibitor space, talking through pricing. That's a big thing right now, especially with the cost of inflation. So trying to keep our conference as affordable as possible for students. So there are some different rounds of questions just to make sure that we're on the same page, but we are accepting applications for our next host campus site and then also into the future too. So if you're like, I don't know if we could do it for 2024, but interested in 2025 or 2026, we like to usually have it lined up a couple years out, and we're a little behind coming back from the pandemic as we enter this endemic state. So we would love to see more folks interested in hosting our conference. I thought I was like trying to think of every question, but I know I probably missed some. So I wanted to open it up either in the chat or if folks want to go off mute and ask any questions that I maybe haven't covered yet.
I'll kind of get things started, Heidi, if you don't mind, just to kind of start the conversation. Welcome, everyone. So excited to have you join us. This may be your first time working at your institution. maybe your first time proposing to take students to a conference since the pandemic, whatever it is, just want to give you some advice of what worked for me. I used to work at a very large institution. But even though we were very large, we didn't always have a large budget. And so how I made sure that we invested in our students, a couple of things. I did an application. So I did a simple couple question application of why students wanted to go to the conference. And then I proposed to my supervisor. Of course, it doesn't always align with our hiring timeline for next year for our student leaders. But what are the students that we wanted to invest in? And so they may be on our team in a paid position and a volunteer position, but what are those students that we want to invest in? And those should be the students going to the conference, not your current students. Who are your students that's going to be with you for the next year, that's going to be able to really take the information from the conference and apply it? And then also the students that went had to do a presentation or something upon their return. So again, you're justifying the cost, right, after this pandemic. And so how can you show your leadership that you're planning and being thoughtful? And then they're like, okay, right? And so they're thinking about all these things and how we're plugging back. I know it's been a stressful past couple of years. So how are we justifying pouring back into our students and giving our students that leadership that they lost the past 2 years? And so just those are a couple of suggestions that really worked for me. Clearly, my experience was pre-pandemic, but I'm just making those recommendations for you all now. So hopefully those help. And then my experience, I didn't take students my first time. So for me, having a passion for service and having a role in higher education, there's not a conference that really does this for us. So NASPA, typically there's not a lot of workshops about social justice in terms of college students, community service, civic engagement. And so Impact was that for me. And so my first year, I actually used it as my professional development opportunity, and then was able to really justify to my leadership why it was so important to take students the following year. So for me, it was a different experience. I didn't take students my first year. So just a different vantage point. So I just wanted to share that.
I did the same. I wanted to check it out, see what's going on, get a lay of the land, and then bring students. And I think, Jasmine, you also highlighted a great point too, that thinking about leaders. And so who do we tailor the conference for? It's for all types of students. So our first year students all the way through our senior students as well. So we want to make sure that our content is accessible. And so we do have ongoing conversations about wherever folks are in their journey or understanding of their identities too, that it's represented for that. But it is a space that will also challenge too, right? That's in our mission. We want to challenge students' understanding of service action and advocacy in pursuit of social justice. So you'll see that represented throughout our conference. It's great for leaders, and it's also great for that new student that's just getting started too. Are there other questions I can answer before I move on to talk more about how administrators can engage in our conference? I'll move on, but feel free to drop more questions in the chat, and we'll also have time towards the end as well. So I know we talked about students a lot. This is a student-focused conference, but we also know that there are a lot of administrators, faculty, staff, nonprofit members, year of service folks, graduate students that attend as well. And so we wanted to share a little bit about what do we offer those folks. I think that it's an opportunity to network and connect. We usually have an administrator happy hour or connection time where folks can come and mingle and connect intentionally. And we want to support that professional development through our administrator tag on our workshops. So we often have folks that are submitting their own workshop proposals for administrators, which we would love to see, encourage folks to share that too. Jasmine and I also sit on our trends working group on our board. It's trends in the field. So we'll take a look at maybe some of the workshops that have been presented or been proposed and accepted. And then also what other trends are we seeing in the field and making sure that we have that represented in our space. And if we don't, then we'll do some board sponsored workshops workshops as well, where we're making sure that we're keeping content relevant. We're talking about critical issues that we're facing and seeing. And we've been having a lot of conversations about engaging Gen Z in this in this endemic state. We're not really post-pandemic, we're endemic. How do we welcome students back and engage them? We've been talking a little bit about, I know a lot of folks have been talking about meeting basic needs as well. So what, I know folks are talking about like food pantries on campus or other basic needs access. And so what are campuses doing to address that? Maybe creating a space to discuss that as well. So we want to round out some of those sessions as well. And then we also want to offer support for student connection, learning, and reflection too. So kind of trying to build that into our conference as well. So that way it's organically built into the conference and you can kind of supplement it too, right? We have that reflection space at the end of our session, but you can tag onto that as well. Adam, I see your question in the chat. What are some of the topics and themes you anticipate? I think that addressed a little bit of that. I don't know if there are other themes, Jasmine, that you remember us talking about. I think another theme that we did talk about in our group is just that there's been a lot of transition in our field in terms of staff. I mean, that's the great recession, not recession, transit. What is the word I'm thinking of? Resignation, the great resignation, hopefully not a great recession, resignation. And then also a lot of transition of staff. So we've discussed what is it like to be at an institution where a lot of knowledge maybe has left. Folks that have been at the institution for several years have left. There's a lot of new folks, which is exciting, but maybe need training, making sure that we're supporting folks that are new to the field, since a lot of jobs I know in our field have not been hired for in a few years. And now I'm seeing tons of job postings in our field. So lots of new folks joining us. So trying to make sure that we're addressing some of those themes, but would also love to hear more from you all about what other themes we can make sure that we're representing and you see at the conference too. One of the things that I always love is the workshop proposals. We see a lot from students about what they're interested in and passionate about, and that also kind of curates the conference too. They help shape what's topical and relevant to what their experiences are. I think in the last few years, we've seen a lot of that huge focus on identity, a lot of focus on mental health and wellness, which is something we've also talked about. So those are, I think, some big themes that we keep seeing bubbling up. And we'll also probably, I don't think this year, but some years we do see a big push around civic engagement, especially as we think about voting. But I don't know, this isn't that right timeline this year. So it'll probably be like into our next conference in 2024. Wanted to offer some opportunities to connect with us. So we have our website, which answers probably a lot of your questions that you might have, but also on social media, different ways to engage with us. And as we wrap up our time together, I do have this time held on my calendar for the next half hour. If folks have additional questions or maybe nuanced questions specific to your institution or your experience, but would open it up for any final questions before we end our time together today. Awesome. I will drop our general board chair email address if you need anything specific, but I also think that our website will answer a lot of your questions. We also, each of our committees has a email address as well. So if you have something specific, it's workshops as well, those pieces too. Isabel, great question about when our keynotes will be announced. So we will announce those on a rolling basis. We are signing MOUs right now. And so we'll probably start to announce those. Usually we do like November, December, January kind of announcement to start to build that excitement once we get those MOUs signed. So we've got some really great folks coming through. And then you can also check our website to see like who has presented in the past to kind of get a sense of who's at our conference, who's talking as our keynotes too. Any other questions we can answer?
Yes, any questions? That means that we covered everything. Hopefully that means we covered everything. For those that never been to an Impact conference, what do you feel like your leadership may need to know? Or did we cover everything that you need to know to take back to your leadership? Or not. Yeah, I think we covered everything.
Perfect. I'm going to stop screen.